I've never seen anything like it. Those words from Billie Jean King perfectly captured the extraordinary scene that unfolded at Flushing Meadows on August 25, 2026, when the tennis legend witnessed the Eala effect reach a level she had never experienced before. Louis Armstrong Stadium had been transformed into a sea of Philippine flags as thousands of Filipino fans gathered to support 21-year-old Eala, turning a U.S. Open session into something far bigger than a normal tennis match. King has spent decades watching the greatest players in tennis history, from Margaret Court and Chris Evert to Martina Navratilova, Serena Williams, and Venus Williams. She witnessed the battle of the sexes, helped build the WTA, and became one of the most important figures in the fight for equality in sport. She has seen legendary champions command stadiums and watched tennis evolve from a relatively small professional sport into a worldwide phenomenon. Yet, even with all those experiences, what she saw surrounding Eala in New York was something completely different. Philippine flags filled the stands. Red, blue, yellow, and white appeared in almost every section. Children held handmade signs. Families wore Filipino colors, and thousands of voices joined together with one powerful chant. Let's go, Alex! The atmosphere was electric. At the center of it all stood Eala, a 21-year-old Filipina who had climbed to a career-high world number 18 and had become one of the most exciting young players in tennis. Beside her was Canadian star Felix Auger-Aliassime, who was experiencing the Eala effect firsthand as they prepared for their mixed doubles match against Alina Svitolina and Gail Monfils. The match mattered, but the crowd made it clear that this was about something much bigger. It was about representation, pride, and the emotional connection Eala had created with Filipino fans around the world. Auger-Aliassime had already spoken about being excited to experience the Eala fan base, but nothing could fully prepare him for the noise inside Louis Armstrong Stadium. This was not simply a group of supporters cheering for their favorite player. It was an entire community coming together around a young athlete who had become a symbol of possibility. Billie Jean King understood that immediately. She had already met Eala weeks earlier at Wimbledon, and that meeting left a strong impression on the tennis legend. King spoke about Eala's concentration and composure, explaining that she had followed her development for several years and was impressed by how poised the young player remained under pressure. Their conversation also became personal when they discovered a shared connection through their brothers. King talked about her younger brother, who later played professional baseball. While Eala is also extremely close with her brother, they discussed family and even spoke about Eala's grandfather. But what impressed King most was Eala's character. She described the young Filipina as grounded for her age and praised her gratitude, despite the enormous attention surrounding her career. That maturity has become an important part of Eala's rise. She is only 21, but the expectations surrounding her are already enormous. Every ranking jump creates more attention. Every major victory brings more headlines. Every Grand Slam appearance creates another wave of Filipino pride. Yet, Eala continues to carry herself with confidence and humility. That is where Billie Jean King's famous philosophy, pressure is a privilege, becomes especially meaningful. Those words are displayed inside the player entrance tunnel at Arthur Ashe Stadium, and Eala is now experiencing exactly what they represent. The pressure exists because people believe in her. The attention exists because she has achieved something extraordinary. The expectations exist because fans believe she can go even further. And on August 25th, King saw exactly how many people were willing to stand behind her. Looking across Louis Armstrong Stadium, King saw Philippine flags waving everywhere. She heard thousands of fans chanting Eala's name. She watched families and young children proudly supporting a player who had become much more than an athlete to them. King has experienced passionate crowds before. She has seen Wimbledon at its loudest and the U.S. Open at its most intense. She has watched Serena Williams command enormous stadiums and witnessed Olympic crowds unite behind their athletes. But the Eala effect felt different because it was not simply about a superstar. It was about an entire community seeing itself represented on one of the biggest stages in tennis. That is why King's statement, "I have never seen anything like it," carried so much weight. Coming from an ordinary spectator, it might simply sound like excitement. Coming from Billie Jean King, it was a powerful acknowledgement that something unusual was happening. Eala's influence had moved beyond rankings and match results. She had become a source of inspiration for Filipinos around the world. The Philippines has not traditionally been viewed as one of tennis's major powers, but Eala is changing that perception. Her rise has shown young Filipinos that the biggest stages in tennis are not impossible to reach. She has demonstrated that someone from the Philippines can compete against elite international players, climb into the world rankings, and create a global fan base. Her number 18 ranking tells only part of the story. A ranking can measure performance, but it cannot measure inspiration. It cannot show how many children are watching Eala and dreaming about becoming tennis players. It cannot show how many families are traveling to tournaments because they want to see someone who represents them. And it cannot measure the emotional impact of thousands of Philippine flags filling a Grand Slam stadium in New York. Billie Jean King understands that kind of impact better than almost anyone. Her own career was about much more than winning matches. She fought for equality, opportunity, and recognition, and she understood how athletes could inspire people far beyond the playing surface. When she looked at Eala and the crowd surrounding her, she could see that same potential. King has expressed hope that children, both girls and boys, will see Eala's success and become interested in tennis. That could become one of the most important parts of Eala's legacy. Her impact may not ultimately be measured only by titles or rankings, but by how many young people decide to pick up a racket because they watched her compete. Imagine a child in the Philippines seeing Eala on television and realizing that someone from their own country is standing on a Grand Slam stage. Imagine that child believing for the first time that becoming a professional tennis player is possible. That is how sporting movements begin. One athlete succeeds, another generation watches, and suddenly an entire country starts dreaming differently. Eala has the opportunity to create exactly that kind of change. The setting at the U.S. Open made the moment even more symbolic because the crowd was celebrating her inside the tennis complex that carries Billie Jean King's name. The woman who helped transform the sport was watching a young Filipina potentially begin another transformation. King helped create opportunities for future generations. And now she was seeing Eala use those opportunities while potentially opening doors for a new generation of Filipino players. It was tennis history meeting the future in one stadium. The Philippine flags stretching across the stands were more than decorations. They represented how far Eala's journey had already traveled. Her story began in the Philippines, but now thousands of people were celebrating it in New York. Fans had traveled from different places because they wanted to be part of her journey. For many, this was about more than tennis. It was about feeling connected to home. It was about seeing a Filipina athlete compete on one of the biggest stages in the world. It was about hearing thousands of people shout her name and realizing that her success had become part of their own story. That emotional connection is what makes the Eala effect so powerful. Fans do not simply see her as another tennis player. They see someone who represents them. And Eala appears to understand the responsibility that comes with that support. She continues to show gratitude and humility even as the spotlight becomes brighter. Those qualities impressed King during their meeting at Wimbledon, and they became even more meaningful in New York. Eala was not walking onto the court alone. She was walking onto the court with an entire community behind her. Every point became emotionally significant. Every appearance became a celebration. Yet she continued to compete under enormous pressure, showing the mentality that has helped her rise. Former U.S. Open finalist Greg Rusedski has praised Eala's potential and suggested that she could make a deep Grand Slam run because of her mentality. That is significant because Grand Slam success requires much more than talent. It requires resilience, patience, confidence, and the ability to stay composed when the pressure becomes enormous. Eala has already shown signs of having those qualities, and now she is discovering what it feels like to have thousands of people supporting her at the same time. The U.S. Open has therefore become more than another tournament on her schedule. It has become a stage where the connection between Eala and Filipino fans is impossible to ignore. New York has a large Filipino community, and the tournament has given those fans an opportunity to see someone who represents their culture competing at the highest level. For many supporters, attending an Eala match is not simply entertainment. It is an emotional connection to home. It is a chance to see Philippine flags inside a famous American sports venue. It is a chance to cheer for a young woman whose journey has given them a reason to believe. And that is why Billie Jean King's reaction matters. She was not simply commenting on a noisy crowd. She was recognizing that the sport was witnessing the emergence of something new. The Eala effect had grown from fan enthusiasm into a genuine movement. And the remarkable thing is that Eala is only 21. Her career is still in its early stages. She has years ahead to improve, face new challenges, win more matches, and potentially climb much higher. That means the scene at Louis Armstrong Stadium may not be the peak of her influence. It could be only the beginning. If Eala continues to rise, the crowds could become even larger. If she reaches the later rounds of Grand Slam tournaments, the international attention could become enormous. If she eventually challenges for major titles, the Filipino tennis movement could become one of the biggest stories in the sport. People may one day look back at August 25th, 2026, as one of the moments when the world first recognized the true power of the Eala effect. Billie Jean King was there to witness it. She saw the flags. She heard the chants. She watched the stadium transform around one young athlete. And she understood that the moment was bigger than one match. It was about what Eala had already inspired and what she could inspire in the future. Championships can make players famous, but connection creates lasting legacies. Eala has built a connection with Filipino fans that extends far beyond tennis results. Her story combines ambition, humility, family, national pride.